I open this academic ceremony in which Alina Shirshikova will defend the academic thesis, Path to Opportunity, Navigating Mobility-Related Barriers in Access to Education and Labor Market. May I invite you to present the summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Prorector. I will share my presentation. Dear Prorector, dear members of the Defense Committee, dear colleagues, friends, and family who is watching this Defense Online, first of all, welcome. Today, I will be presenting my dissertation titled Path to Opportunity, Navigating Mobility-Related Barriers to Access to Education and Labor Markets. This research investigates how geographical, cultural, and institutional barriers influence access to education and employment with a focus on mobility-related contexts. In many parts of the world, access to education and labor market is hindered by various mobility barriers. These barriers can prevent individuals from accessing training and subsequently work opportunities, and thus limiting economic development and social cohesion. The research in my thesis focuses on understanding the impact of these barriers or the impact of lifting them on education and employment outcomes of people. I think the topics I address are particularly interesting for modern policy, since on the one hand, there is a long-term trend on growing globalization and an increase in international migration. And on the other hand, there is an increasing and often unsatisfied demand for skilled labor across many regions and countries. I hope that insights from my research will help to enrich our understanding of how different policies can affect educational attainment and labor market success and support better policymaking. For my research, I use a variety of methods, combining evidence from natural experiments and survey experiments. For those from the audience who are unfamiliar with these terms, you can think of natural experiments as a real-life events that occur naturally in the flow of history without any control or intervention from the researchers. These events often divide people, regions, or even countries into groups that are affected by it or unaffected by it on the other hand. For example, if a government changes a law or a policy for a group of people, researchers can study how this change affects people by comparing outcomes before and after the policy change, as well as between different groups affected by it. These experiments are valuable because they provide insights into cause and effects in real-world settings. In contrast, in other experiments, and in particular survey experiments, they are planned, designed, and conducted by researchers in a fully controlled environment. While this approach may create a more artificial setting, more hypothetical one, it often allows for deeper insights into how people make decisions. So my dissertation, something wrong with the slides? No? Yeah. My dissertation is divided into 3 main chapters, each addressing the general topic from a different perspective. In chapter 2, I focus on the role of geographical accessibility of education. In chapter 3, I look at cultural barriers in education and labor markets, specifically addressing the issue of ethnic discrimination. And then in chapter 4, I studied the impact of lifting institutional barriers to migration on local employment and training opportunities. So let me give you a better overview and a closer look at the single chapters and my findings. In the first study, in my dissertation, I look at how regional borders affect people's educational opportunities. What is the effect of making higher education more geographically accessible, and who benefits most from local universities? In this study, I make use of the change in public policy in higher education that took place in Egypt in the 1960s, 1970s, where the government decided to build universities in almost each province of the country in a relatively short period of time. Before 1960s, only a few provinces in the country had access to university education on their territory within the borders of the province. And then within about less than 10 years, the government constructed 15 new universities in 15 different provinces that previously had no access to higher education. Geographically, if you look at the picture on the slides, the map, it looks like this. So everything that is shown in shades of gray got university during this period. So it's actually most of the country, except for several central provinces shown in white that had old universities founded long ago. In this study, I rely on variation in dates of construction in different provinces and variation in exposure to university across students of different age. That's because people who were older than 18 years old, which is the usual graduation age in Egypt of that time, they are much less likely to enroll when university finally becomes available. So I'm using this policy to look at the effects of access to higher education. My findings suggest significantly better education and employment outcomes for both men and women, but for women especially. I also show that local access to education empowered women socially. They showed higher autonomy in decision-making within their families and delayed marriage and childbearing. Together, this suggests that educational policies do not only improve educational attainment and labor market outcomes, but also have far-reaching effects on gender equality, which is a concern and the subject for policy debates in many developing countries in the modern world. Yeah. In the next chapter, I switch the topic and focus on ethnic discrimination in the German apprenticeship market and seek to answer to what extent minority applicants are affected by ethnic discrimination and whether something can be done to mitigate it from the policy perspective and interventions. To answer these questions, we've conducted a survey experiment among German employers. We asked these employers, recruiters, to evaluate the probability of a job interview for the applicants that we have described to them. We randomly varied information in this description so that it allows for causal interpretation of our results. A short look, like a quick look into my findings for this chapter. My findings show that minority applicants, have slightly but yet lower chances of getting an invitation. They also show that social skills can help to mitigate these disparities. However, the mitigation effect of skills is not universal for different ethnic groups, unfortunately, which asks for more targeted policies. And finally, the study in chapter 4 of my dissertation focuses at the effect of lifting institutional barriers to migration and looks at how foreign temporary workers influence local employment in the context of Germany. To do it, I once again rely on a natural experiment. When after European Union enlargement, the restrictions to temporary worker flows from new member states that have just joined the EU were lifted. I use the variation in a district's exposure, which, according to my assumptions, stems from the differences in industrial composition of districts and the specialization of migrant workers from new member states in particular industries, usually agriculture, construction, and like industry jobs. My findings show that districts with high exposure to foreign labor experienced a decline in domestic employment and training opportunities, which were most pronounced actually in the sectors like agriculture and construction, where competition with foreign temporary workers is actually the strongest. Additionally, the negative impacts are most pronounced among the most vulnerable groups of domestic workers, low-skilled, part-time, and marginally employed ones. As a short summary, to conclude, my research suggests several policy implications, including the need to improve local educational infrastructure, especially when we talk about developing country contexts, the need to incorporate social skills training into integration programs, and implement supporting policies to shield vulnerable groups of domestic workers from the negative impact of competition with foreign labor, or at least to soften this transition, and maybe providing these people with training to switch to a more secured areas of employment. Thank you very much. I now give the floor back to the prorector.
Thank you for your presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Dr. Bart Goldstein, who was the chair of the assessment committee and who is professor in human capital and social economics at this university. The floor goes to Professor Goldstein.
Thank you very much, dear Alina. First of all, congratulations on finishing your thesis. It contains 3 very well-written empirical chapters on access to education, one of which has already been published in a top-ranked academic journal. Congratulations on that as well. In the chapters, you use natural experiments like the opening of the universities in Egypt and the liberalization of labor mobility regulations in Germany, and also a survey experiment in which you ask recruiters to evaluate fictitious apprenticeship applicants in Germany. This range of ideas, the profoundness of your analysis, and the overall quality of the papers are quite impressive. I'm certain that your other 2 papers will also be published in good journals, and that you have a great future ahead of you as a researcher. Nevertheless, I have some questions, and they are all on chapter 3. So I will ask now 2 questions on chapter 3. And so in this chapter, you investigate whether there may be discrimination in hiring decisions in the German apprenticeship market. Analyzing discrimination is notoriously difficult because unobserved heterogeneity among applicants may bias the results. But you employ a clever approach by holding a survey in which you pose hypothetical scenarios to recruiters. They are asked to evaluate the probability of inviting fictitious applicants for an interview for an apprenticeship position in the most common training occupation within the firm. In the experiment, you randomize 8 characteristics of the applicants, which include ethnicity, indicated by an ethnicity-specific surname, levels of social skills, knowledge about the profession, analytical and digital skills, gender, time of residence in Germany, and education level. Besides the good setup of the experiment, one of the great points in your research is the large scale. Your sample consists of nearly 2,000 recruiters, and the sample is representative. My first question is on the external validity of your results. Your experiment is hypothetical in nature, and the main advantage of this is that you have full control over the characteristics of the applicants, which is crucial to show causality. But these recruiters, they may be aware of the sensitive nature of their answers and may choose differently in hypothetical scenarios than in reality. So my question is, how informative do you think the decisions are for real scenarios? Can you speculate, for instance, how the results are biased in case the recruiters give socially desirable answers? And my second question is whether you could think of a way to design an experiment with real candidates. I look forward to your answers.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your questions. They are very important ones about which we also, I've also thought during the design of this study. Concerning your first question, which relates to the so-called social desirability bias in the hypothetical research. Indeed, we had this concern when designing the study. Unfortunately, we were not able to include, as the survey was quite large already, we were not able to include some measure of the social desirability bias for a single respondents. But in the background analysis, I have done several robustness checks, for example, using only the first replies from each recruiters when they do not exactly know what the next candidates will be presented, which tends, according to the literature, which tends to reduce the probability to detect this outcome with the social desirable answer. Of course, it doesn't alleviate the concern fully, but at least the analysis, this analysis shows that the results are pretty much the same to the situation when I use the full sample. Nonetheless, it's important to highlight that indeed there could be social desirability bias in my results, but I would expect this social desirability bias to push the general detection of the size of ethnic discrimination be downward biased. So when people give socially desirable answers, they tend to soften their perceptions of migration, of discrimination, which may mean that the real discrimination is harsher than I discover in this study. However, based on the previous research, methodological research on survey experiments and vignette studies in particular, I wouldn't expect this social desirability bias be very pronounced in the complex interactions of experimental attributes. So what we were interested most in this study is how skills interact with discrimination, whether they can alleviate these discriminatory patterns. Even if detected discrimination is less or larger in size, we do not expect, I wouldn't expect these patterns depend too much on the size of the effects, because it's quite hard for the participants to figure out all the interactions between the attributes and give socially desirable answers according to the full interactive model. Yeah.
Thank you. The presentation will be continued by Professor Dr. Guido Schwert, who is a member of the assessment committee and who is an expert in public economics at the Universität Konstanz. And the floor goes to Professor Schwert.
Thank you. Let me also start by congratulating Alina for this very nice thesis. I have to say I really enjoyed reading it. I do have two questions here. The first question concerns chapter 3 as well, and then I have one more question on chapter 2. So my question on chapter 3 is, I would like to hear a little bit more about what you think the role of expectations is in the whole story. In similar work, for example, we find that in a similar experimental settings that computer skills at an early age do have a different impact for boys and girls. And what we make out of it is that maybe it's not the computer skill per se, but it's the, looking at the literature on statistical discrimination, is just that recruiters expect a certain level of this skill set for this one group, but not for the other group. And then what the differences are actually explaining is not that they kind of return or differences in the returns to these specific skills, but that these skills then for different groups may signal also something else. And I would like to hear your thoughts on to what extent that could be translated also to your settings, where maybe also social skills measured as especially in this CV setting with some certain activities may just be different signals depending on what kind of nationality or ethnicity you are confronted with. And my second question regarding chapter 2, so that's a rather simple question. I would just like to hear a little bit more about sort of the structural model, so the mechanism, especially behind the differences between males and females. So essentially what you're doing is that you're exploiting arguably exogenous variation in the reduction of mobility costs or cost of attaining higher education, and that kind of triggers a whole causal chain, and that somehow is different for males and females. I would like to just hear your thoughts on how that structural model would look like, and what's the crucial thing that then in the end results in these differences and heterogeneity in findings.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your questions. Regarding your first question on the role of expectations, yes, I expect expectations definitely play the role even in the results of our study. And it can be explicitly seen in the heterogeneity analysis I conduct, where it's obvious that, for example, professional experience is perceived differently for applicants with migration backgrounds and for applicants without this migration background. There we can speculate. We haven't tested for it directly because we couldn't predict the results in advance. But here we say that most probably these differences are connected to the different expectations and different perception of what is the content of this professional experience. But if it was acquired abroad, it is possible that it should be discounted in new countries, new work ethics, and new work context. Regarding your second question about the mechanisms for difference between males and females, male and female outcomes in my first study, unfortunately, we do not have enough data to test the mechanisms explicitly, but we suggest that migration and social norms may play a huge role in this difference. As we show in the study, as for men, switching to for men, the policy reduced the migration costs a bit, and instead of attending a university far away, they switched to attending the local university, which of course saved them some financial resources and maybe traveling time. For women, however, traveling to the remote university in the Egyptian context was not an option. So for them, we see the huge improvement and the huge spike in enrollment after introduction of local universities. While for men, local university is rather a substitute. For women, this local university is the only option to get higher education. About the mechanism why it could be like that, there could be several reasons. First, and highlighted by the recent literature, is the social norms that might be more strict in the Arab world and many developing countries where the son preference is quite pronounced and strong in the families. Second actually is the preference of women themselves to attend the local university in order to save some time for housework or other activities. It's a little bit outside of the text of my thesis, but attending the conferences, I've also spoke to researchers who investigate the same patterns and find the same patterns in German context and in an Italian context. So I wouldn't expect the social norms, like religious norms, play the major role there. It's rather more externally valid and has to do with the preferences, with the differences in preferences for traveling between men and women in general. I hope this addresses your questions sufficiently.
Okay, that being the case, thank you. The opposition will be continued by Professor Dr. Andries de Grip, who is a professor in economics and always been very much involved with ROA, with the actual institute, and he's still involved with Maastricht University. So the floor goes to Professor de Grip.
Thank you, Mr. Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, dear Alina, I remember that we particularly met quite a lot when you just started at ROA. At that time, you and Senna were the only two who were in what we thought would be the new ROA building. And then in February 2020, we thought soon others would join you. Unfortunately, soon after that, the building was even emptier than in which you started. By having such a tough period and tough start, I was very pleased to see that you now have such a very nice thesis. So my compliments. As Professor Goldstein said, it includes three very good empirical papers. As you mentioned, natural experiments, survey experiments. So my congratulations with this. My question is also on chapter 3. I think these kind of experiments have a great advantage, particularly when you go into such issues as revealing discrimination or revealing preferences people don't want to address in a simpler survey. So I appreciate your work here a lot. However, I have my questions on this chapter, and first is on your dependent variable. You've chosen to have a 10-point Likert scale, whether the candidate would be invited for a job interview, which is the first part of the selection process. I was wondering whether it wouldn't be better just to have a simple invite or not invite dependent variable. And the reason for that is, now I'm not sure, but maybe you can give some information on this, whether the difference is in the higher spectrum of the Likert scale. So for instance, a 7 to 10, but in that sense, both are invited. So what's the problem then? Or even when it's in the lower scale, 1 to 4, also both are not invited. So the critical thing is in not being invited. So that's my first question, but I will continue with the others first. Wouldn't it be better then to just have a simple invite or not invite dependent variable? And having your entire model, I also want to go into the skills, which are, of course, very interesting and core to ROA business. You're including 3 values of these attributes, satisfactory, good, and very good. But for me, it was a bit strange that you would not have something like insufficient. because now you think, you hope, you research that whether skills could bridge the difference between good and very good. So yeah, what's the matter? In both cases, an employer would like to have the person, I think. But by having insufficient, it gives a much stronger focus on whether there's really something wrong with discrimination in the judgment of the recruiters. So that's my second question. Why not including insufficient as a value? And last but not least, I was triggered by your outcome that only, although not for all backgrounds, only social skills mitigate the gap in the job interview probability. And I was thinking about this, could that be because social skills, they are really core and maybe also the only skills you have included in your experiments, which are really related to cultural distance? The others are much more technical things. And when you find that social skills could bridge something, could you then also learn something on let's say, the reason for, yeah, let's say the backgrounds of discrimination if you find it? So yeah, these are three questions I have with your work, which is excellent, as I mentioned already. But I'm looking forward to your reply on these questions. Thank you.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your questions. They're very important ones indeed. Regarding the 10-point Likert scale, indeed, I had a trade-off when designing this experiment between the simple choice experiment with binary outcome and the Likert points. And my intuition was that by introducing just binary outcome, we can lose some information. And this would undermine our possibility to look at the discrimination patterns. Regarding the distribution of values about different candidates, whether it was different at the top or at the bottom, it was actually both. So native candidates, German candidates with the German names, were a little bit more likely to get higher estimates, those above 8, and less likely to get estimates below 5. So the distribution is kind of skewed a little bit for non-native applicants. In a binary context of the dependent variable, we most probably wouldn't be able to look at these patterns. Also, I admit that it could be in some parts of the analysis, it could be more effective in terms of, for example, heterogeneity analysis, giving us more power instead of dividing this power between different categories of like or do not like, invite or do not invite, and to which scale. Your second question, if you allow me, is about the choice of scale, satisfactory, good, and very good, which we used in the study, and we haven't included unsatisfactory. If I think about it, it indeed could be the caveat of the design, but unfortunately, all experiments have their limits, and the number of attributes we could include, I could include in the study, were also limited. However, I guess not including unsatisfactory shouldn't affect the results too much, because unsatisfactory category is by itself, just by this word, is quite a signal to the employer not to select this candidate. And regarding your third questions, why only social skills? Could it be the cultural distance? I wouldn't, it could be cultural distance. I couldn't exclude this possibility. However, in our analysis, we show that different groups of ethnic minorities are affected by the discrimination, of course, differently, but it doesn't correlate with the cultural distance between German population and these minorities. For this reason, for this exactly reason, we have included different ethnicities in our analysis, including Polish, Dutch, and Arab applicants. And from this perspective, Dutch applicants, according to many scales, even if we take the Hofstede scale or other culture values, language distance, and even geographical distance to the German population, Dutch candidates are discriminated at the same rate as Arab candidates if we do not account for this social skills bonus. So I wouldn't say that social skills and this mitigating effect of social skills is correlated exclusively with this social distance, because inclusion of the social distance measure in the regression doesn't affect the results, unfortunately, leaving this miracle for the future research, why it's like this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The proposition will be continued by Professor Dr. Franziska Gassmann, whose expertise is in social protection and development at UNU Merit at this university. The floor goes to Professor Gassmann.
Thank you, Prorector. Dear candidates, also from my side, congratulations with your thesis. It is very well written and it was a pleasure to read. I particularly liked that each chapter had a very specific angle, both with respect to topic, methodology, and also country context. And so I will focus on your, let's say, first empirical chapter, where you in this first chapter, you address the question of education and labor market outcomes in Egypt, and in particular for women. Now, Egypt as a country in the MENA region has, as many other countries in the region, actually a very low female labor market participation. I checked and it was in 2023, it was 17%. And of course, access to education is the first step, and your analysis has shown that indeed, that the expansion of universities has enabled access, and hence the share of women that attained a higher degree. And that then also translated into an increase in labor force participation of women. So far you can say these are the textbook outcomes of your analysis. But you then take the analysis a step further and you focus on the marital outcomes for women, and you conclude that the expansion of universities leads to women finding higher quality husbands, younger, higher education with a better job. And I was wondering, what does this actually tell us? And so here are my questions to you. What is the underlying theoretical framework that has guided this part of your analysis and could actually explain these outcomes? And how do your findings for Egypt compare with the existing literature, maybe from other countries inside or outside the region? And finally, what are the policy implications? What will you actually tell the Egypt government? Thanks.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your questions. Starting with the low LFP labor force participation of women in the MENA region, indeed, and in Egypt in particular. I will start with how my findings compare actually with other research from different countries and from the research in this MENA region. Unfortunately, there is not so many studies investigating the effect of higher education and education initially in the MENA region. However, my findings go quite in line with the new evidence from developing countries, other developing countries, for example, India. There was a recently published paper in the Journal of Human Resources, also finding similar results as in this paper. And I also know that these results largely go in line with the findings for German and Italian contexts, with the difference between female engagement in education and labor force participation, subsequent labor force participation, depending highly on the distance to the universities and accessibility of university in a local district or local province. Concerning your second question, about the mechanisms for the social outcomes and for the role of university in the marriage market, I would say. It was not the exact scope of this study. We investigated these outcomes first out of curiosity, but I would imagine that this part of the research links my paper directly or indirectly to the large literature on matching markets in the microeconomic theory, where university, in this case, serves as an additional marriage market, and where people with different characteristics can meet. Because if we look at the contexts, it's when we see in the results that women are married to higher educated spouse and younger spouse, I would say we do not have this data exactly of who is the man who this person is married. That data would be too confidential, I would say, to use. But I could hypothesize, I can assume that most probably these people could have met during this study process at the university, and then get along and form the household. I would be more careful now with the definition of the higher quality husbands there. I wouldn't call it more higher quality in order not to discriminate by other characteristics. I would say it's just different. We see the shift in these marriage patterns, which suggest us that university is an important marriage market for women, which is highlighted also by the results for men, which are absent in our case. So women who attend university change their marriage patterns, while men who attend university stick to the same pattern as before.
Thanks, but now actually I would say, one of the important findings is that let's say the age of marriage has actually increased in the Egyptian context, and that relates to what we see in the region still, that the prevalence of child marriage, or actually there is a quite a study still going on. So to some extent, this is a very good finding for the women and in this context. So that is also why I was wondering, can you say anything about what policy implications would be and what you can derive from that? I'm coming from a policy school in a way. I'm always interested in what is your findings, how are they relevant for the policymaker?
Yes, and that if I would say, if I would be asked to highlight one thing important from the study, is that if you aim to improve outcomes of women in any sphere, you should take distance and geographical accessibility into account, no matter what it is. In the case of this paper, it's the university education, higher education, but I'm sure it works also for school, for the accessibility of the workplace, which is actually the reason for the striking result you mentioned in the first part of your speech, that now labor force participation in Egypt is also stagnant, I would say, compared to the periods that is taken into account in my paper. Because after this period, which is the scope of my study, there were other reforms that were quite detrimental for labor force participation. And for example, in the 90s, many workplaces, many public institutions were taken out of the center of the cities to some distant regions, which was more problematic for women to travel, which contributed also to the lower labor force participation in the subsequent cohorts of women, unfortunately. But it's out of the scope of my particular study. And I agree with you about the delay in the childbearing, but I would rather highlight the importance of the other outcome, which is, in my opinion, comes in the first place. The direct decrease in early marriages, in marriages before age of 18. Because for childbearing, one could explain it simply by, well, woman attends education. The woman attends education and she delays the bearing of the child by this 3 or how many years while studying. Which is exactly the case, because we do not I do not find the effect on overall fertility for these cohorts of women by the end of their fertility cycle. But the incidence of child marriages at early age, that's quite an important result, which also connects us to the literature on the trade-offs between education and marriage for women in developing countries, where people or parents, for example, of these women in the theoretical model can look at education and marriage as two substitutes in the investment strategies in their child, for example. Either marrying too young and building the household elsewhere, so investing in terms of like fertility line, or giving your daughter more education, and she will be more successful probably on the marriage market afterwards.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Adrian Lerche, who is an expert in labor economics at the Institute for Employment Research at the Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich. Floor goes to Dr. Lerche.
Thank you. And yeah, first of all, also from my side, congratulations to your thesis. It was really interesting to read all the chapters. Nice to have like this variety of chapters, and I think it's not common in economics to have like a published paper already with your thesis. I think that's also like, you know, congratulations to that. I think that's a very great signal that you have already. So I have some questions, and first of all, I'm interested about chapter 4, about the impact of foreign temporary workers. And so if you think about like a very simple model of immigration, it's basically just like these workers are a labor supply shock. So there are more workers in the labor market, which should then basically also only change the wages. But you would expect in a very simple model that everyone's still employed. So it's interesting then your result that you see that domestic employment somehow decreases. It seems workers are not employed anymore that have been employed before. So the question then is, you know, why is this result? Yeah, where is this coming from, this result? And my questions in regard to that is, first of all, I was wondering about like these posted workers. So what makes them special? Are there differences there that basically a firm can think about these different types of workers and thinks, okay, a posted worker is more attractive because of some regulations, etc. So the question would be to learn a little bit more and understand, you know, what these posted workers are and what the regulations behind them are and what makes them so attractive, maybe even cheaper for a firm to hire them. And the second point is then whether this effect that you find is indeed real. So my concern is that basically the posted workers you do not observe, as I understand, in data. And possibly it is now a way for a firm to hire these workers through these posted contracts, which possibly are more attractive, but before they were hired, basically, for example, as a temporary worker, and then you see them in the data before, but now they're just switching the type of contract they have. And this decrease in domestic employment is just this shift of workers from different contracts, but in the aggregate, actually nothing is changing. So I was wondering there, and like a question to you, what other types of contracts there were before, whether there are ways to check or find out whether this is a real effect or just like shifts of immigrant workers between different contracts.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your questions. Indeed, I guess I will start from the explaining who are the posted workers first, so that we are more in the context of my replies for the following questions. The most important difference between posted workers and, let's say, seasonal or temporary workers in the some firm, let's say in Germany, is that posted workers, they are not counted as local employment per se. They are affiliated with the firm that have sent them, and this firm, their employer, their real employer, resides in a different country. So let's imagine when, for example, a firm in Poland sends your construction workers for a short-term stay and work in Germany, but these workers still are employed in Poland, and they are under Polish regulations what comes to the labor regulations and social security regulations. They are paid in this firm in Poland, but they perform their services, they deliver their work in Germany. That's the simplest definition, I would say, of a posted worker. Nowadays, a lot have changed in terms of regulations and the guarantees of a minimum wage for the posted workers, exactly in order not to create these disparities in the costs of local workers and posted workers. Because if you imagine the minimal wages or like usual market wages in Germany and market wages in Poland, of course, hiring a Polish people to perform work in Germany for German company would be more it would be cheaper if there are no other regulations. Nowadays, the regulations are in place, but there still could be some discrepancies that are concerning the social security packages and, for example, holiday leaves, holiday pay. These regulations usually should go in line with the with the regulations of the sending employer, so employer in our case in Poland, which could also create some benefits for the receiving country, in our case, Germany. Keeping this in mind, whether the effect I discover is real, I would rather say yes, because if we imagine that all we detect is the switch between temporary work contract in Germany to the posted contracts from other country to Germany, this would mean that this temporary worker would need to go to another country, register as a posted worker in this country, and be sent to Germany afterwards. I would say it's rather a hard way of doing this thing for this worker. And what we probably detect, given the other results and heterogeneity of the results, is that indeed this is not just a switch of the contracts, but posted workers substitute this marginal employment of local German residents, which is important, whether they are migrants of some generation, that could easily be. but it's still the substitution effect. So one type of temporary worker substitutes other types of lower skilled and temporary workers who reside in Germany already. And yeah, I guess it's pretty much the mechanism for this result. However, for this study, I should raise some concerns because my analysis is based on quite a strong assumption, which is related to the lack of data, mostly to the lack of granular data. Because for Germany, unfortunately, I do not observe the posted worker flows for each district separately. I observe them on a more aggregated level. And then under my assumption that the regions with a specific industrial composition would be affected more, I calculate this exposure to the shock, to the supply shock indices, which can raise some concerns about what drives what, whether it is demand that was falling for specific skills or whether its supply of specific skills was falling. I would say, let's say, if in Germany in specific years, the number of available employees in a specific sector, let's say construction, was reducing, falling over time, and the local firms have to substitute this falling supply of local workers with posted workers, I couldn't disentangle this in my analysis with compared to the substitution effects. For this, I would need, and the researchers would need, a more granular data with more exact worker flows and posted worker flows in the German districts. And unfortunately, as far as I know, this data doesn't exist as for now, and this cannot be assessed as for now. So my results in this paper are quite like their first impression and the first impression about the directions of the effect. However, I should highlight that similar studies looking at the effect of posted workers also find results quite close to what I find for Germany.
Thank you. This concludes the first round. It gives us still the opportunity for a second round, but only for a few minutes. So I immediately give the floor to Professor Goldstein if he would have a short question.
Yes, thank you. I actually had a question on chapter 3 on the de-efficient design, but given that we have almost 1 minute or 2 minutes only left, I'll ask a different question, and that is, suppose that you could do your PhD thesis again, what would you do differently in retrospect?
I guess most of the changes would concern the second empirical chapter with the survey experiment, because when you start a survey experiment, you design the survey experiment, and then afterwards you have so many ideas and so many things you should have included, but you couldn't. For example, I would definitely try to persuade the team to include the social desirability by scale. Although I'm not sure if it would be feasible, but it's worth a try once again. I would also think about the set of nationalities, the set of ethnicities included in the study, because now I had initial idea of including ethnicities with different distance to the local population. But still, given that only a few of them were included, it would be nice.
The Beadle said that the Hora asked that the hour has passed, but please conclude very shortly the response that you were actually giving.
Yes, but Actually, I guess this concludes it already.
Okay. Thank you very much. Alina Shirshikova, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed, and the degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense. And I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return.
Please unmute Professor Popper.
Dear Alina, I was muted, so you noticed, but your promoter, as alert as he is, actually made sure that I could address you properly. The degree committee here present online has assessed the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense, and in view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Curvers is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom, and I'm happy to invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Yeah. First, Alina, we have to take the oath. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principle of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest and transparent, independent and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
Okay. By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present online, I hereby confer upon you, Alina Shirshikova, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law.
You will be shown the degree by the beadle.
Yeah. So as evidence of this, you will soon receive the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the supervisor, affixed with the official seal of the university, shown by the beadle. There it is. Okay. Yeah.
The laudatio will also be given by Professor Curvers.
Yeah. So I will start with the laudatio. Yeah. This. Yeah, I have to be sure that I can see you, Alina, because where are you on my screen? There you are. Okay. Yeah, there, Dr. Alina. First of all, I would like to congratulate you on your doctor's title, your PG Bull, your great thesis, and also, in my view, but the opinion of others does not deviate that much, your great defense. Also on behalf of your supervisors, Harold and Raymond. And of course, many congratulations to your friends, your parents, Senna and Zola, and family, especially your closest family. Now I have to pronounce the names of your family, so may go wrong. So many congratulations to your mother, Tatjana, and father, Gennady, and your sister, Anna, and brother, Anthony. I'm very proud of you, and also with your defense, as I said, and particularly you had to struggle, the delay, and but your family can even be prouder of you. Your PhD career is now over, but what an adventure it has been. You started on the 1st of February 2020. I remember when we first met a few months before in a hotel on the market in Maastricht. Actually, we were not supposed to meet officially because the formal procedure did not allow a meeting between the supervisor and the candidates for the PhD position. It sounds weird, but it's really true. Nevertheless, we had a pleasant meeting, and shortly afterwards, you were appointed on a Marie Curie grant agreement for cross-border research called LIMES, funded by the European Union. You became part of a multidisciplinary PhD program together with 12 other PhDs from different faculties at Maastricht University. Among these students, you were definitely the most hardcore economist. It's not bad to learn about what is happening in other fields of science, and to get some skills training in, for example, communication strategies and how to make an impact. But I can assure you that I was most satisfied with your econometric skills as an economist. During the PG process, it turned out that you perfectly knew how to estimate the causal impact of interventions regarding education and skills on behavior. In those 4 years, you survived several viruses, namely the computer virus at Maastricht University when you started as a PhD student, and also several COVID viruses. Of course, the armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine also caused tensions in Western Europe and the Netherlands. This and the COVID crisis made it difficult for you to visit your beloved family and friends in Russia. Apart from this, and I think a minor point, is the weather in the Netherlands. Not pleasant, I guess, because of all the rain, and definitely too hot for you as a Russian lady, especially, you complained about the warm winters. Although you already had some experience in Germany, since you got your master's at the University of Bonn and worked as a research assistant at the ITSA, the Institute of Labor Economics in Bonn, you had to struggle to find your way in a foreign, strange little country like the Netherlands. Nevertheless, you managed to publish an article in a very reputable journal during your PhD period, based on your master thesis at the University of Bonn, together with our former ROA colleague, Ahmed El-Sayed. This article fit the thesis perfectly. And then we did an extensive vignette experiment together with Harold, Raymond, and some colleagues at BIC, the Federal Institute for Education and Training in Bonn, that you also have been visiting as a researcher during Corona times. And I'm sure we can publish this also in an excellent journal. Finally, you managed to write an article, I would say a job market paper. Here I was very impressed with how you set up the article straightforwardly and did the analysis and interpretations yourself. Adrian, so Professor Lerche asked some questions about that last chapter. I really have to say you were very honest about the shortcomings of that chapter. It was not really asked by Adrian, but you mentioned them yourself, is of course also in the chapter. But really, all you needed for me on this chapter was some kind of confirmation that you were on the right track. And yes, I really have to say you were a very independent researcher throughout your whole PhD time. Therefore, we cannot but conclude that you have definitely earned the doctor's title from Maastricht University. I want to wish you good luck with your career and life in Moscow. I'm sure you can make a great academic career in economics. So I think you can be proud. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Dear Dr. Shirshikova, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I congratulate you, your family and friends, but also your supervisors with the degree we have acquired. And I would like to thank the opponents, the members of the degree committee, for their interesting and nice contribution this afternoon. I hereby officially declare the ceremony ended, but we've invited those who participated in it to still take give them the opportunity to congratulate you also, because I already could do so. So I give the floor to each of the opponents and your supervisors to once again congratulate you, because you've deserved this fully. Whom of the, I'm not going to appoint anyone, I leave it all up to you to spontaneously do so, but Professor de Grip already wants it, will take the floor.
Dear Alina, again, my congratulations. And now after your very strong defense, as Frank said, it's a pity for me that I can't join your party this evening, but I'm very glad that here I can congratulate you again. It was wonderful to be in the session with you, and I wish you all the best in your further career.
Thank you very much.
Dear Alina, congratulations. Unfortunately, I have to leave now, but I want to congratulate you and wish you all the best in the future. And I hope you enjoyed your online session.
Dear Alina, it was nice to meet you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to read your thesis. Congratulations and all the best to you.
Yeah, congratulations also from me. You did a great job. It was a great pleasure to be your chair.
Thank you very much.
Dear Alina, also congratulations from my side. It was very nice meeting you, and I really enjoyed this defense, and I really enjoyed reading your paper, and I'm looking forward to see for the last two papers the published versions at some point.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope so too.
Professor Lerche.
Yeah, dear Alina, congratulations. As I said before, a great thesis, and it was actually nice to get to know you through this thesis. And I'm also looking forward to the second other chapters and see how your career will be evolving in the future. And yeah, best of luck with that. And,
Your supervisors, Professor Pfeiffer and Dr. Montisan.
Yes, Alina, congratulations. From my point of view, have more than earned this title, and I was very glad and I'm proud to have been your supervisor. Everything else, we will have a drink in about 10 minutes. See you later.
So, dear Alina, it was a great thesis, a great defense. I would not have expected otherwise, because you were a very, very good PhD student, very independent always. It was of course not easy, so especially in the beginning with the COVID crisis, etc. Of course, having 3 supervisors instead of 2, sometimes also with different opinions, so it's not always easy. But you worked everything out, so I think you did an absolutely great job. And also I would like to apologize that I cannot be there tonight, but as you can perhaps still hear, I'm most likely highly contagious. Still suffering from the last final legs of the flu. So I just have to get better again, and I don't want to make you immediately sick when you start also in your new job. But I would like to congratulate you with it, and I wish you all the best for the future. And of course, we stay in contact, because we now have to finish the papers and to publish them. So actually, we should talk next week.
Okay. Dr. Shirshikova, once again, congratulations. Lots of success in your further career. I apologize once again for keeping you all longer than needed, but it was for a very festive and honorful occasion. So thank you all.
Bye-bye.